Hello everyone, I'm pleased to present a study conducted within the Bilhaut team in Rennes in France, in which we explored how auditory cues, specifically footstep sound, influence anticipation and avoidance behavior during the interaction with virtual pedestrians. Moving through public spaces is a fundamental part of everyday life. It requires continuously adapting to the surrounding environment, steering and avoidance collision with other pedestrians. Understand how people navigate crowded environments has important implications, improving patient assessment in healthcare in ecological setting, designing public spaces that are accessible and efficient, and developing more realistic virtual agents to simulate crowds and study pedestrian behavior in virtual reality. This is why virtual reality has become such a valuable tool. VR allows precise control over the environment while maintaining ecological validity. It enables us to create complex social interaction and to test hypotheses that would be difficult or even impossible to examine in real life. Most VR platforms designed to study pedestrian interaction provide by nature partially information, integration primarily visual information, and occasionally haptic feedback. When people interact while walking, their behavior relies on a continuous conflict between perception and action involving multisensory integration. Across existing studies, sound has largely been overlooked, even though auditory perception offers distinctive advantage over vision, unlike visual perception, which is directional and constrained by a limited field of view. Hearing is inherently omnidirectional and temporally dynamic. The aim of this study is to assess whether adding footstep sound influences how people avoid collision and, more specifically, to determine whether auditory devices constitute a cost-effective addition to virtual reality system, as well as a valuable means of enriching multimodal representations to make VR-based experimental tools more ecologically valid. Different studies have investigated multisensory integration. For example, Luan et al. Explored how hearing and vision contribute together to motion prediction, perception, and localization without, however, showing evidence of multisensory integration. They suggest that human flexibility adapt their sensory strategies to the context, integrating modalities when beneficial but prioritizing one modality when integration is less reliable. Other studies have investigated how auditory information contributes to perceiving and predicting motion, which is a fundamental ability when interacting in a dynamic environment. Wessel et al. Investigated time to contact estimation for visually presented acceleration vehicles and found that adding auditory information significantly decreased error. In Walkin scenarios, Young et al. Investigated the perception and reenactment of spatiotemporal characteristics of walking sound, while participants would accurately discriminate large differences in stride length. Their perception was significantly influenced by temporal factors. This suggests that although participants could imitate both spatial and temporal gate parameters from auditory cues, their judgments were more heavily based by timing variation than by spatial differences. Yu et al. Showed in a real environment that footstep sound can influence social perception such as perceived status and persuasion, highlighting the role of sound in shaping how the users interpret and engage with others. In VR, sound design usually combines different elements. Researchers often distinguish between action sounds produced by the user, like walking or eating something, and environment sound coming from objects or the surrounding space. Interactivity is also key because sound changes as the user moves and acts. For example, several studies have evaluated the effect of auditory cues on perceived realism and presence in immersive environments. Kern et al. Showed that adding some ambient soundscape has a strong effect on the perceived realism and presence, stronger than the addition of the participants' own footstep sound, possibly due residual imperfection in the reproduction of step. Nordal et al. Also investigated one's footstep sounds, showing that participants reported a significant higher sense of presence in an audiovisual condition with pressure-tagged step sound compared to the purely visual one. In nonverbal communication, Yang et al. Showed that combining visual information with specialized auditory cues significantly enhanced local workers' task, performance, sense of social presence, and spatial understanding of the shared environments. Similarly, Fink et al. Investigated collaboration in augmented reality, focusing on both the visual feature of avatar and the auditory characteristics of the environment, revealing preference for spatial audio over mono audio. While pedestrian interaction mainly rely on vision, previous research showed that sound can also influence behavior by guiding attention and helping estimate other movements. This preliminary study aimed to test how important it is to include footstep sound for virtual pedestrian in VR system. To do this, we ran an experiment where real participants had to avoid a collision with the virtual pedestrians. 20 unpaid participants volunteered for the experiment. They were asked to walk in a virtual environment toward the target while avoiding any collision with the virtual agent crossing their path. In this setup, the virtual agent followed a straight trajectory orthogonal to that of the participant, approaching from either the right or left side. The virtual agent walked at constant speed and made no adjustment to its trajectories. Walls were set to hide the virtual agent at the beginning of trial so that participants reached their comfortable walking speed before being able to see the virtual agents. We designed a within-subject experiment manipulating the auditory environment with two conditions, footstep sound and no footstep sound, comprising 26 trials. Your first expectation was auditory informations support successful task execution. Fewer collisions should be observed in the footstep sound condition compared to the no footstep sound condition. The results showed that the perception of collision was significantly higher for the no footstep sound condition than for the footstep sound condition. The first expectation is confirmed. Your second expectation was if auditory cues enhance anticipatory motion estimation, participants should initiate avoidance maneuvers early and maintain larger avoidance distances in the footstep sound condition. For this, we calculate the evolution of the future crossing distance before the virtual agent became visible and from the moment it became visible until the crossing. On these curves, an increase in distance indicates a collision avoidance maneuver. The results showed that there was an early collision avoidance maneuvers and higher values under the footstep sound condition than under the no footstep sound condition. The second expectation is confirmed. Our third expectation was if auditory information affects visual attention allocation in favor of the footstep sound condition rather than the no footstep sound condition. Results showed that before visual interaction, gaze tracking data revealed early gaze allocation towards the virtual pedestrian in the footstep sound condition. And during visual interaction, a reduced proportion of gaze directed toward the agent in the no footstep sound condition, where the absence of auditory cues may delay or even prevent timely visual detection. The third expectation is confirmed. This study investigates the influence of auditory cues on pedestrian behavior within virtual reality platforms. The results demonstrate that the rendering of footstep sound exerts a significant effect on participants' interaction with a virtual agent, notably modifying visual attention, anticipatory processes, and interpersonal clearance. These findings support the systematic integration of auditory feedback in experimental platforms where the objective is to obtain reliable and ecologically valid data on human locomotor behavior. This study, however, presents several limitations. First, the number of participants and their characteristics were not controlled, including gender, age, and cultural background. Second, from a methodological standpoint, it would have been preferable to randomize trial as we use a block design. Finally, the ecological validity of this study remains limited to differences in sound transmission between the VR headset and the real world. Nevertheless, your results suggest immediate applications such as studying the behavior of hearing-impaired population, whom the absence of auditory cues can critically alter interaction dynamics. They also highlight the need for further investigation into multimodal integration and its role in controlling locomotor trajectory, a field that remains underexplored in the literature. Finally, extending these lines of research to the study of collective phenomena, particularly the mechanism by which pedestrians prioritize interaction in crowd contexts. Thank you very much for your attention.